Joining me now to discuss this further is Faruk Logoglu. He's a former Turkish ambassador to the United States, and Pavlos Eleftheriadis, who is a professor at the University of Oxford. Let's begin with you, Pavlos. Why the saber rattling now?
Well, I think there are domestic reasons on both sides. I mean, as far as I can see from the Greek point of view, the Greek government is in a very difficult position. It's highly unpopular. The plans it made for a clean exit from the program is not looking to be working very well. The economy is not recovering, or at least not fast enough. There's huge problems with unemployment and poverty and so on, as you know. So this is a way for them to score some domestic points. I don't read anything else.
We saw with the whole refugee migrant crisis of tens of thousands of people making their way across the Aegean into Greece, there was some sort of coordination, communication between Turkey and Greece, and actually they were coordinating a lot of these efforts, especially off of Lesbos. We've come a long way since then, haven't we, Ambassador?
But that coordination still is in place, and it is continuing, and it's very effective. I mean, to the benefit of not only Greece and Turkey, but the European Union, and especially, of course, the people who try to cross the Aegean into Europe. I think despite all the tensions, Turkey and Greece both recognize the fact that they are neighbors, that they stand to benefit most from any cooperation, any collaboration on any issue. And this refugee control of the passages of refugees in the Aegean is an outstanding example. I think in answer to your question to Pavlos, the problem is the long-standing problems between Turkey and Greece, mostly on the Aegean and the Turkish minority in Western Thrace. These long-standing problems have not been resolved. But now there are new ones being added to it. So the chronic tension between Turkey and Greece is really hurting both sides, as Pavlos said, for domestic reasons and for other reasons.
A long-running Ottoman rule over Greece, tensions from the Greco-Turkish war, in the 1919 onwards. A lot has gone on between these two countries, hasn't it, Pavlos?
Well, yes, but it's not ancient history, but it's very old history now.
But as the ambassador was saying, old problems, new ones.
True, but if you have visionary leaders, when you had Venizelos and Kemal Atatürk, you can have a peace treaty and make very, very dramatic decisions
after a war.
Go forward after war. And indeed, I mean, for me, the model is France and Germany. After many, many wars, they set up a legal framework for not just cooperation, but integration and interdependence on the basis of the rule of law. And I see no reason why Greece and Turkey couldn't do the same, either within the European Union, for me the ideal scenario, or in some other way. Here the problem lies with Turkey, I'm afraid, and I would like to hear what Faruk has to say about this, because a real opportunity was missed in 1982 with the new Convention of the Law of the Sea, where Turkey is the only European state, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't accept this new convention on the law of the sea. Greece accepts it, has ratified it, all the European nations have ratified it, and Turkey is the only one who doesn't want to settle these disputes on the basis of the existing code of the law of the sea. So I think President Erdogan inherited this problem, but I think a very courageous Turkish leader would say, okay, right, look at this law of the sea convention. Every country in the world has recognized it. Let's see if we can work with it. And you can. And there was some, I suppose, fear at the beginning that it would work against the interests of Turkey. But if you look at the decisions of the International Court of Justice on the delimitation of maritime zones, it has gone more or less. I mean, these are legal technical arguments. I don't want to go into them at all. But it reflects some of the concerns of equitable resolution of Turkey, in the case in Ukraine and Romania and other cases. So I think the law of the sea, for me, it should be the starting point for a legal framework for resolving this dispute. That's how Germany and France did it, and that's how Greece and Turkey should do it.
Ambassador.
I think, Turkish-Greek friendship does not really depend solely on the signing of the Convention on the Law of the Sea. The reason why Turkey did not sign it along with the United States, by the way, the US has not signed it either, is because of the particularities, the special characteristics and formation of different elements in the Aegean. So that some of the provisions of the law of the sea are applicable, but some are not. This is the Turkish point of view. But in
Are
any
the
case,
Kardak Islands, for example, resolved?
yes,
Or will that issue be?
There are, territorial waters, continental shelf, exclusive economic zone. Yes, these are matters taken up in the law of the sea.
So the question again to Pavlos, how can you sign an agreement if there are still disputed areas?
Well, I'm a practicing lawyer. I go to court often, and in fact, in planning disputes, it is land development disputes, you always start from the plan to see who has what rights. The plans are made under an existing framework of law. So that is the problem.
I have spent years dealing with these problems, Turkish-Greek problems and the problem of Cyprus. I am perfectly convinced that you can resolve all these issues between Turkey and Greece through negotiations, sometimes looking at the law of the sea, sometimes looking at other arrangements. There are elements of the Aegean disputes that can be settled in terms of international law, including the law of the sea, and there are matters that can be resolved through bilateral negotiations. As we talked earlier, I told Pavlos that Greek politicians are under far greater pressure from their public about their approach to the resolution of these problems. It is far more difficult for them.
Well, it's a very sensitive issue for Greeks.
Yes, but so it is. But so it is for Turkey. But the difference between Turkey and Greece is that Turkey is much more ready and readily prepared to accept.
I almost see a mirror argument emerging here. Pavlos is saying that the Greeks are ready, that they are willing, and the ambassador is saying that the Turks are ready. So there is a middle ground.
Right, exactly.
But
if both sides are ready, then we have to find
on this table, not in Athens and Ankara.
I wouldn't go into a negotiation with someone when part of the negotiation is what is the underlying law. So if I'm in a negotiation with Donald Trump about property, and he says, I'm going to write the property law as well while we negotiate, I wouldn't do that. I'm going to go to negotiation with Donald Trump, with anyone, especially a bigger country with a bigger military, if we said, these are the ground rules, let's agree on the ground, and then we negotiate. The law of the sea has a process for the settlement of disputes. So the process of negotiation is within that convention. So I see no problem for Turkey entering into the system and say, these are the rules. And if Turkey accepted international law, then the Greek public, which is as patriotic as the Turkish public, I'm sure, they would be perfectly happy to accept compromise.
The Turks would say that if Greek accepted certain things, Greece the law on the ground.
Let's
move on. These are both two NATO countries. I'll get to you, Ambassador. These are both important NATO countries, part of the NATO alliance. Can we realistically expect a war in this day and age between two NATO allies?
First, on the previous part of the discussion, if the law of the sea was or is so omnipotent, then there would be no disputes anywhere on this earth, anywhere in Far East, the Atlantic, the Pacific, whatever. To answer your question, a war between Turkey and Greece is certainly nonsensical. But can you rule it out? No, you cannot rule it out because tensions are chronic and always tight between Turkey and Greece. And any small incident has the potential to escalate and get out of hand.
Ambassador Logoglu, thank you so much. Pavlos, thank you.
Thank you.